Here we are on the official Power BI website, and to download Power BI Desktop now, we go to Products and select Power BI Desktop there. By the way, you see more tools than the free ones we just talked about, so Power BI Desktop, Power BI Pro, and Power BI Mobile. The Power BI universe comprises more than these free tools, but as I said in the last lecture, these are the most important and the core tools to understand to be able to work with Power BI. Therefore, we'll focus onto these tools in this course. So, as I said, let's select Power BI Desktop here. And here we now have two options to download Power BI Desktop: download free or see download or language options. The difference here is that download free leads us to the Microsoft App Store to download Power BI Desktop there, which is totally fine. And the right option here is an option which allows us to download Power BI Desktop from this page and to specifically adjust some download settings. I actually prefer this second option, therefore I recommend you to do the same and click onto see download or language options. And now we are on a new page, and if we scroll down a bit, you can first select the Power BI Desktop language you want to download. You can also change the language later in the installer. And down here you find the system requirements, so make sure to have a look at these to make sure that Power BI Desktop runs on your machine. We can continue now by clicking on to download, and please also select English here as language to make sure you can follow along my steps in Power BI Desktop then. So we download it, and now we have to decide if we have a 32-bit or 64-bit Windows machine. In case you're not sure about this, you can just press the Command key on your keyboard and there type system information. See it up here, this option should be selected. And in the system information, in the system type option right here, you see that I have a 64-bit machine. In case you have a different one here, make sure to select the 32-bit option to download Power BI Desktop. I'll go with the 64-bit option therefore, and now by scrolling down and clicking onto next, the download should start. This can take a few seconds, and then we'll see each other in the Power BI Desktop installer. The installation finished, and as I said, you can now also choose a different language right here. As I said, I recommend to stick to English to make sure you can follow along this course as convenient as possible. So we can now click next here. Now we click next once again. We accept the terms in the license agreement and press next. Here we can now change the path where Power BI Desktop should be installed to. I'll go with the default one and therefore again click next. And now we can create a desktop shortcut here if we want to and start the installation finally. This again can take a few seconds. And now we can press finished, and with that box being ticked, Power BI Desktop will start immediately. And here we are now in Power BI Desktop. This is the starting screen whenever you start a new Power BI Desktop project. And to do our first steps in Power BI Desktop now, we'll now connect Power BI Desktop to source files and then create our first visual already. We already learned a lot of things about Power BI Desktop already, but what is inside this course? What will your journey in this course look like? We are almost done with getting started, and in the next module, we'll dive into the course preparations. This means in this module, we'll have a look at the typical Power BI Desktop workflow. So which steps are we going through in a typical Power BI Desktop project? We'll explore the interface in a bit more detail, and we'll also dive into the recommended settings to make sure that your and my Power BI Desktop projects are aligned. Afterwards, in the next modules, we'll dive into the query editor. This deep dive will be divided into two separate modules. One module will dive into the data preparation aspect of the query editor. This means we will see how we can work on columns, how we can extract information from columns, how can we delete columns, how can we work on rows, so how can we fix errors in specific rows, how can we change formats, and so on. So how can we prepare data to be able to use this information later on. And in the other module, we'll dive deeper into data transformation. Transformation means changing the initial structure of our project. Specifically, we'll dive into data modeling in this module, so we'll create a specific data schema, which you would also see in bigger data analysis projects. So you will learn how you can apply these slightly more advanced concepts with the help of Power BI Desktop. After we finished our data preparation and transformation, we'll dive into the actual data model part of Power BI Desktop. This part is again divided into 3 different core areas. One core area will be data analysis expressions, DAX. This is a Microsoft-specific programming language, so to say, so a language that allows us to interact with our data, specifically to perform data analysis steps. A simple example here would be, with the help of DAX, we can calculate averages. We'll of course dive deeper in this course in this language and also what we can do with this language. Besides DAX, we'll also dive into relationships. Relationships allow us to establish a communication between different tables. In the course, we'll explore why this is important and how we can do this. And finally, as part of this data model part of the course, we'll have a look at reports. Reports are one of the core concepts in Power BI Desktop because on our different report pages, we create our visuals. So we will have a look at how we can create different visuals and about different visual concepts Power BI Desktop ships with. Up to this point in the course, we only worked locally as a single user in Power BI Desktop. This means after this core part is done, we'll enhance our Power BI project focus to the cloud. Now we'll have a look at the sharing and collaborating features Power BI ships with, and this means we will leave Power BI Desktop and dive into Power BI Pro. Power BI Pro is this cloud application, and in this cloud applications, we will dive into the concept of workspaces. These are dedicated areas in our Power BI Pro cloud that help us to manage our projects. We'll have a look at gateways, which allow us to manage the updating logic of our projects. Because if you have a project stored locally in Power BI Desktop and the underlying source data changes, then you might want to reflect these changes also in your project in Power BI Pro. And finally, we'll have a look at apps. Apps allow us to share our projects that we manage in Power BI Pro efficiently inside our organization. After the Power BI Pro concept is clear, we'll finally have a look at Power BI Mobile. Power BI Mobile is a mobile app, and with this app, we can access our projects managed in Power BI Pro from anywhere via a mobile device. In addition to these core concepts covered in the course, you will also find information about how to stay up to date and about how to connect Power BI Desktop to more advanced data sources. All these modules can be found after these core modules of this course. So with this, we are almost done with getting started. There are still some important things we should have a look at to make sure that you get the most out of this course. Visuals can be found here in the visualizations column in the right part of the screen, and there we can now simply select any visual that might be appropriate for our analysis. I, for example, go for this stacked column chart here. So I click onto the symbol, and there we see our template, so to say, for a specific visual, which we can move around here or which we can also increase in size. And in some cases, the filters menu here can be collapsed, so you can always expand or collapse any of these menus here to the right. I'll keep the filters opened here for the moment, as we'll need these in a few seconds. At the moment, this is an empty visual, so therefore we need to add data to this visual, and we can do this via this fields column here to the right. we can open this query 1 connection here, and there we see the different column names that we had before in the query editor as so-called fields. Now we can drag and drop these fields into dedicated areas of that visual, and with that, the values that field or that column holds will be added to that visual. For example, for such a chart that we have right here, the axis value, so for the x-axis down here, could be the year. So we can now simply drag and drop the year into the axis area, which is a nice first step. The problem is that we don't see any values for the corresponding years. This means we can now also add the GDP data, so our second field here, and drag and drop this into the y-axis area of our visual down here, like this. Now we have x-axis values in our visual, the different years, and for each individual year we have y-axis values. These are our GDP data. And the problem is that we actually have the GDP data for different countries. At the moment we just have the sum of the GDP for all of these countries. This brings us to our third field that we have in our data, the country field, and we can now simply drag and drop this into the legend area of our chart. With this, we see that we have a differentiation for each individual country by color, which makes this chart a lot more insightful. The problem though is that we have too many countries. What we could do now is we could reduce the amount of countries being displayed, for example, to the top 4 countries by the GDP, so only to the top 4 countries that have the largest GDP in our dataset. We mentioned this filters column already, which we can collapse or expand right here. In this filters column, we can see that we have 3 different filter options in our visual. These are the 3 fields that we added to the visual. And if I want to filter for specific countries by the GDP as value, I can simply go to the country filter now. So I hover over this area, click onto this lower arrow, and with that open the filter menu for this specific field. We won't use the basic filtering here, so we can open this drop down and instead use the top N filter, this one here. And top N here now allows us to only show the top or also the bottom if we want to, but we will go with the top. And now the top 4 countries in my case by a specific value, and the value here is the GDP. Therefore, we can again go to the fields area and drag and drop the GDP field into that filter. Now we only have to apply the filter by clicking this option down here. And with this, our chart now only shows the top 4 countries by GDP, which are China, Germany, Japan, and the United States. And now you might say, well, this chart doesn't look too fancy. Why don't we use a more fancy visual type here? This is also possible because we can dynamically change the visual we're currently using by simply selecting the current visual. This is important, so if you click anywhere else in this report, you see that the menu here changes. But if I select the visual like this, you see we have all our options back. And now if I, for example, select this map visual here, this globe symbol, if I do so, then we should actually see a world map, but in our case, this is not working here. This can happen in Power BI Desktop. It's a very powerful tool with lots of options, also related to security. In this case, we can simply go to the options and enable these map visuals. For this, we can navigate to the File menu, there go to Options and Settings, go to Options, and now access the Security menu. If we scroll down a bit here, we can simply enable the Use Map and Filled Map Visuals option by ticking this box. And with OK now, down here, the error still is displayed, but if we now switch back to our column chart once again, and then reselect the map, then the map here is finally loaded. You see that I now have a map with the 4 different countries selected in my previous visual, and the bigger the GDP is, the bigger this bubble here gets. What we could do now is, as well, the differentiation for the different years is not too helpful, we can simply go to the legend area and simply remove that field by clicking onto this X symbol. With this, we now have 4 bubbles here in our map, which looks quite nice actually. We could now just add a data label with the corresponding country name here. And to do that, we can simply navigate into a different area in our visual. So we are again in the visualizations column. And now we leave our fields options here and go to the format menu. If we select this menu, we can simply add the category labels here. If we turn this on, you see we now have the United States, Germany, China, and Japan once again. And with that, we actually finished our first visual already. Now, this is just a quick preview of a lot of features we have in the query editor and also in this data model part. But I hope you saw that Power BI is really easy to use and that great looking visuals can be created quite easily. What's missing here though is saving our project, of course, an important aspect, otherwise we use our work. And this can simply be done by going to this save option up here. If we click it, we can now select a specific area where this project should be saved. And I'll give it a file name of initial project. Finished maybe. And by saving this, we get this PBIX file. These are Power BI project files. And with that, we can now close this Power BI project and continue with this Getting Started module.